I don't know. It's hard to tell when I'm live on this thing. It's because it is a bit of a delay. Um, Look behind me right now. It's Reformation Sunday, last Sunday in October. I always forget about it. Actually, that's not true. We had a special Reformation service, Reformation Sunday service, some time ago. I don't know, it was last year or the year before. Anyway, we did something special for it. I cannot immediately recall what that was, but I think it was well received. Today, it's well, it's we didn't really mark Reformation Sunday in uh, in our church service today. We have Martin Luther behind us putting his 95 Theses up, which were his problems with the way that the church was acting at the time. He found that the church had become, well, how do you put this? It's strayed away from the gospel. His motto was sola scriptura. He was also looking at ways to get back to basics in Christianity. Things had become top heavy. There was a whole lot of bureaucracy. One of the things that Martin Luther was about was not selling indulgence. I'm waving, Isaac's going for a walk. Not selling indulgences. Like, for example, if grandma died and you had a lot of money and you wanted to make sure grandma got a fast track to the good place, you would you'd send some money to the church and they'd make it happen. Well, he's like, well, as if. And also, trying to shift the balance between the waiting tradition versus scripture. He was more on the scripture side. Priests getting married, very important, which actually was quite helpful for women, believe it or not. It was one of those steps that went to legitimizing relationships and women's places within their home and within the church. So that was good. We certainly would not be here if it had not been for folks like Martin Luther and Zwingli and Calvin and all those folks there. Started the Protestant church. Some people think that Anglicans are Protestant. They're not really true Protestants. Not, and a lot of Anglicans will tell you that. Just because you're not Catholic doesn't mean you're Protestant. A lot of Anglicans will tell you, no, we it's like colleagues of mine. We never stopped being Catholic. We just became the church, the big C church, which back in those days, Henry VIII days, there was only one church. I mean, it was the Eastern Church, but there was the church. When you talked about the church, you were talking about the Catholic Church. It's like saying the country that we're in. We're in the country. People would say Canada, although you could quibble with First Nations, and you'd be legitimate doing that. Anyway, they consider themselves to be kind of like that branch, that continuation branch of the church in England, the Church of England. We're definitely of the Reformed tradition, though, that cropped out of folks like Martin Luther and Zwingli and Calvin. Anyway, so that's where we're at right now. I got told by one of my professors, Mike, you're such a Protestant, because we talked about how beliefs and doctrine can shift, and how one of the things I liked about the United Church of Canada was, like, when data, when realization, when inspiration comes to us, we shift pretty quickly. And I said that's something I really quite like about the United Church, is that we've learned within the last 2 or 3 generations. I mean, look how far we've come on human rights and that kind of stuff. And he's tried to impress upon me, and I really respect it, that other churches move at a more glacial pace, and that's the way they are, and that's why I'm not them, and that's why they're not us. And as long as we get along, that's good. So for today, it's the service itself is pretty simple. It's my mantra has been to try to keep it as simple as possible for as many weeks as we can, because once you start doing fancy stuff, it sometimes I feel like I bite off a little more than I can chew, and it gets a little bit unwieldy. And this week we're pretty simple. I think we're mostly in the sanctuary. I did do a Zoom video. I used Zoom to record a video with some colleagues to talk about the Good Samaritan, and that was a really good experience, and something that we all enjoyed doing. And other folks have told me that they would like to take part in the future. So maybe that's something that I'll be able to arrange. It's pretty simple. You just basically sit at the dining room table and send out a message to everybody and say, hey, would you like to do a conversation about this topic or that topic? And hit record and see what happens. So we'll do more of that. What's coming up next week is, again, it's the first Sunday in November. I can't quite think of the date, probably November 1st, something like that. And then the second Sunday in November, that's the Sunday before Remembrance Day. And that's when we mark Remembrance Day in our congregation. And we have done some interesting things. I know a couple of years ago, we talked about letters that were written home from soldiers in various wars. I think we had one from Korea. We had World War I, World War II. I think we had something more modern than that. We broke up into groups to talk about them. And then last year, we wrote letters to Canadian Forces members who were serving in various theaters across the world, and that was good. In fact, we got a letter back from somebody saying they really appreciated us taking the time to write them. So this year, we're not going to be together, of course. So we're still going to lay our wreaths. I have something special musically lined up that I'm looking forward to sharing with you, and some location work that we're going to do. We're going to take you on. I'm going to take you on a little tour of one of the places that I've been doing some work at for the last 8 years, being a chaplain at the National Military Cemetery. And I've asked permission if I could bring my camera up there one day. It'll certainly have to be a day when there's not an interment, and I'll show you around. A lot of you have been up there, but many of you haven't. So I thought maybe you'd be interested to see what's happening really in our neighborhood. It's not that far away from the church. And I've got Neil Johnstone lined up to do our act of remembrance, and we'll be laying wreaths, and we'll figure out how and where we're going to do that. And we're looking at maybe some little crafty things that we can post outside the church. I don't know if you've been by, but if you've driven by the church, you notice that Trina and Jade Byrne is the person who's the contact person, the point person for the community garden that's on the side of the church. Trina, Jade, and Lisette have made a little display for Thanksgiving and fall, and it's lovely. And we thought, well, let's do something every season to dress up the church a little bit. So Remembrance Day is next. After that's Christmas. So for Remembrance Day, first thing first, we're going to do Remembrance Day. We're going to have that, and then it's a few weeks until we start Advent. Holy smokes, that puts it in perspective. Next week is kind of a regular week, and the week after that's Remembrance Day, and then we've got like 2, maybe 3 Sundays, probably 3, and then we get into Advent. And we've been talking about Christmas, how when this whole thing started, we never imagined for a moment that we wouldn't be together for Christmas, and now that is becoming more and more a distinct probability. So, but we've got some ideas. Paul's got a great idea for Christmas, and we're gonna do our angel tree still, and we're gonna have communion of sorts. And we'll continue to do the best we can. What time is it? 10:25. So I'm gonna get myself prepared for today's service. Now, this is not the service. If you want to take part in the service or watch the service, look for today's date, and it's got the logo. So the service is always going to have, a static picture of whatever. Usually it's the beautiful image that Evelyn Budd designed for our church logo. That's usually what it's going to be. If it's a special day, I'll use a different graphic, as you saw for Thanksgiving. But this is not the service. This is the pre-service. This is the chance for me to kind of gab a little bit beforehand, just like we kind of do, at church when people are gathering. So this is the gathering time. And I'm going to stop this video right now, and I'm going to put in a pot of coffee, and I'm going to get ready to watch the service with the rest of you. So peace, and you'll see me soon and I'll see your little text. And don't forget to join us for our Zoom coffee chat. A lot of people do, and it's always nice when somebody new joins us. It's like, oh, who do we got now? And I know Zoom's not for everybody, and that's the limitations of this. Is I can imagine that when the telephone first came out, there were people who just were not going to adopt that technology, just weren't going to do it for whatever reason. Probably money, and adapting to something new is, people have various comfort levels with that. So we saw that with the telephone. We saw it with email, and I think email is a great lesson of how to do things and how not to do things. I remember when email first came out, we were awful at it. We would have conversations via email that really should not happen by email. Anything personal, anything that has a strong opinion attached to it, anything that's emotional, don't make it an email. Please don't make it an email. Uh, Emails are best for facts. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. Email's good for nice, encouraging things. If there's ever a disagreement or if you're trying to correct a wrong, email's not. It doesn't work. Phone call, much better. Anyway, we were not good at email at the start. Not everybody was using it. So if you're using a new thing that not everybody's using because they don't have access to it, then you have to accept the fact that you're doing something that is at one level a little unfair. So that's with the Zoom thing. We simply can't gather, so that's that. We just can't get together. That's that. But for those of us who are early adopters to this technology, for those of us who have the money for bandwidth and cameras and all that kind of stuff, iPads, iPhones, it's been something. It's been something. It's not ideal, but it's something. And sometimes something is going to have to be enough. I said I was going to stop 3 minutes ago. Grandma Perro raised a whole family of talkers. God rest her soul, wherever she is.